Hi, Lawrence LeBrocq, managing partner of Garces, Grabler, and LeBrocq. Welcome to Victim to Victory, Triumph over Tragedy. I'm here with CFFC World Champion Ryan Cafaro. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, now that everyone knows that you're a world champ, what weight do you fight at?
I fight in the featherweight division, 145 pounds.
So when you have a fight, the official weight's 145. You have to weigh in at 145. What do you weigh when you actually walk into the cage the night of the fight?
So I would say that the average fighter probably gains around 20 pounds overnight after we make weight the day before.
Right.
For this fight, I weighed in at 145.8 because you get a 1 pound allowance. And then by the time I stepped in the cage, I was probably about 167 to 168 pounds. So I probably gained around 22 to 23 pounds overnight.
That's incredible. But you don't have any choice, because if not, you're going to be fighting somebody who's 20 pounds heavier
Correct.
than you.
Otherwise, it's not even an advantage anymore, because this is now the standard for the combat sports industry. On average, people blow up somewhere between 15 to 20 pounds overnight. And so not doing these brutal weight cuts will actually put you at a disadvantage. It won't provide you an advantage, but it will put you at a disadvantage if you are undersized. Right. So it's a necessity, and you have to be good at it.
Now, you're a very experienced fighter. You've already had 19 fights, and you're 35 years of age.
Correct.
So you're not a kid just getting involved in the sport. Take us a little bit through the journey of how you got started in the mixed martial arts to becoming the world champion for the CFFC.
Well, I definitely went not exactly the traditional, I come from nothing sort of route. My parents, they met in Juilliard School of Music. They both played in the Philadelphia Orchestra. I grew up in a big house in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, a very nice suburban area. I went to a nice school, and my parents separated in 7th grade, and I think that caused a little bit of inner turmoil in me. And I definitely was looking for an outlet to release a lot of my frustrations. I would get into, I would kind of like get into fights at school and things like that, and I would get beat up. I wasn't very good. But, as time progressed, I found a love and passion for wrestling in high school, and I started my sophomore year. And by my senior year, I had placed 3rd in districts, it's a pretty difficult thing to do to even qualify for regions as a high school wrestler in one of the toughest states in the nation, which is New Jersey. So I was always proud of the fact that I did take 3rd in districts and managed to qualify for regionals, just based on the fact that I had only been wrestling for 2 years. And then during my high school years, I was watching TV, and I saw a UFC event on Spike TV, and I was immediately just fully infatuated with it. I was like, what is this sport? I need to know everything about it. Right. And I specifically remember it was a fight between two guys named David Loazo and the late Evan Tanner. And it was just an incredible display of mixed martial arts. And I just said, when I saw that, I said, from now on, this is all I want to do. It's all I want to think about. And I've been doing that and thinking about it since I was 17 years old. I finished high school. I made my amateur MMA debut when I was 19. I compiled a 7-3 record. I won 2 amateur titles. And then I made my professional debut in 2013 for the now defunct Bellator organization, right, which I actually lost my professional debut. So I started my career off 0-1 and didn't fight for almost a year after that because, it kind of crushed me emotionally. And then, I started fighting more and putting on a streak after that, shortly after I met my girlfriend, who's now my wife and the mother of my child. And then, just continuing to build. And then I made my debut for CFFC, Cage Fury, in 2015. So my first fight with them was, I think I was around 25 years old. I had some good fights. I won the majority of them. I mean, my total record going into the title fight, the world title fight with Anthony Delemy, was 7-2 in CFFC. But the major fights that I needed to win, I was always falling short. Throughout my career, I had fought for titles in 2 different organizations that were not CFFC, and I came up short in both of those. Right. For a while, it was kind of like when I lost my first title shot when I was, I think, 6-2 as a professional, it just really started messing with me mentally, and it shattered my confidence. And then after that, I thought, and my coaching career started taking off at the same time. So I started taking less time to train myself and more time to train fighters. And I thought, because I'm training other fighters, it's the same as training myself, and when in fact it's not. Just because I'm going to a gym and getting sparring in and getting my training in, if I'm busy focusing on another fighter and trying to mimic their opponent and I'm not, doing what I need to do to prepare for my fight, it ends up making a difference. And you might not feel it, but subconsciously something happens. And I had fights against fighters that I should have beat, and I didn't win, and I was, losing. And when I fought for the Ring of Combat title in particular, I fought a guy from Dante Rivera's gym.
Sure.
And his name was Tim Dooling, and he was the first guy I ever fought who was an aggressive pressure fighter, and I was not prepared for it. And he got me so tired and gassed me out so bad, and he rear naked choked me and submitted me for the first time in my career. And this was right before the pandemic. So if we put it together in a timeline, going into 2020, I was 7-5 as a professional. I had just lost 3 out of my last 4 fights. I had no money. I hated the sport. I was jealous of all of my friends who I had helped elevate to the UFC. I used to train with Sean Brady, and I were coming up together, and to watch him get to the UFC was amazing. I spent so much time helping Paul Felder prepare for the UFC, and just to see these guys get there, like, there was a part of me that I hated it, because it was like I felt like I was good enough to be there. Mm-hmm. And to watch these guys achieve my dream, where it felt like I had let them use me as a stepping stone. And again, at the end of the day, it's my fault for not prioritizing my own goals and wants and needs. So it was very frustrating to see that happen at times, and for these guys to be getting the limelight and to achieve what I wanted to achieve, and achieving even, financial security through the sport that I love. Yeah. And then the pandemic hit. In the pandemic, I was isolated with my wife in our row home in Philadelphia, because we lived in Philly for about 5 years. And when I tell you I didn't do a thing, I didn't move for a month. I just sat there and played video games while my wife went to work. It was definitely a very, very low point. I had $150 in my checking account. And it was, like, when I tell you, when I got a stimulus check, and I was like, oh, thank goodness, I needed that $1,200 bad. It was a very low point, and my wife at a certain point just kind of sat me down and was like, hey, you can't keep living like this, and I know how badly you want this dream. And she was like, if you got tired in your last fight, then we have to work, and we have to work harder to the point where, you hate my guts. And she, her being a fighter as well, she was like, let's go. And she forced me to work out every single day. We had like a 300 square foot basement that had a Rogue Airdyne bike and a bunch of weights. And I did this brutal workout that we had heard about from Khabib Nurmagomedov's camp, called the, my wife and I just affectionately called it the Khabib circuit, where it was basically 30 minutes nonstop, 30 seconds on the Rogue Echo bike, and then 30 seconds of any exercise. Ground and pound on the heavy bag, because we didn't have the height in my basement to hang a heavy bag, so we'd hit it on the ground. Dumbbell bicep curls, squats. She'd make me run up and down the stairs of our basement with a weighted vest, like things like that, and we would do it for a half hour nonstop with 0 break. And when I tell you that exercise and that workout in particular broke me so many times and then remolded me and broke me again over and over and over, it definitely did something to my psyche and the way that I fought and the way that I changed things and how I fought. And so after I'd done that for months, I thought to myself, when I come back and I finally start getting opportunities to fight again, I'm going to go on a tear. And I really believed that. And I mean, if you want to talk about a knife to the chest, the first time I got to do something was I got to corner somebody in the UFC, because they were doing the fights in the bubble in the pandemic. I was 7-5 as a pro, and the first card I went to, there were 6 featherweights on the card, and I said, one of these guys is going to either test positive for COVID or get sick and have to pull out. So I went to the UFC event with all of my medical paperwork filled out. I was ready to roll. I was on weight. And I told them, hey, if somebody pulls out, I'll be ready to roll. And my fighter fought. And then as we were leaving, Paul Felder called me and he said, hey, don't leave yet. Like, I know you're in the airport, but turn around. We might need you for a UFC fight. And, at this point, my heart rate is through the roof. I'm thinking, this is my lifelong dream of getting to fight in the UFC. And then I didn't hear anything. And then they said, sorry, they went with someone else. And they picked someone from a different weight class that had a better record than me, and it absolutely broke my heart. I remember I was crying on the airplane home because he said, Paul Felder told me, he's like, I'm going to be honest with you, they didn't pick you because of your record and because you were coming off a loss.
Yep.
And it was so devastating to me. And he just said, hey, like, he gave me some really good, a good pep talk. And he just said, hey, if you want to be here, let's go win some fights. And then, get your name out there and make it undeniable so they have to sign you. Right. That lit a fire under me. And I really took that to heart. So after that, I finally got a fight in 2021 against a tough veteran as well with, not the cleanest record, but he was tough. And I beat him by a decision, and it was a scary fight. And then after that, I got to fight in Maryland in some kid's hometown, and I ended up beating him. And then I ended up actually taking a professional Muay Thai fight in a rematch against somebody I'd beat prior to the pandemic, which was I couldn't find a fight for a couple months, so I chose that to stay busy. When everything was going my way, I was actually getting offered a shot to fight in front of Dana White on his Looking for a Fight show. I accepted, I was ready to roll, and then the fight fell through. And then a few days later, I tore my ACL and completely ruptured. It was a full tear. I was training, and somebody just went for a takedown, and my knee just popped.
So what year was this?
This was, I believe, 2022. And it was right when I had all this momentum, and, I felt like I was getting that call to the UFC was undeniable. I was in the best shape of my life, and I was like, if I keep beating these guys, it was a matter of time. You couldn't deny me. Yep. And in the prime of my athletics, at this point, I might be 31, maybe 32, something like that. So I'm in my physical prime, and I destroy my knee. And at this point, things have been going a little better, financially and things, but I don't even have health insurance. Sure. And so at this point, I'm devastated because I'm trying to rehab my knee and thinking, maybe it'll heal on its own when statistically ACLs don't grow back. Right. There are very, very, very few cases of that actually happening, and I was not one of them. I went and got MRIs, and they said, hey, your ACL's fully torn. We got to schedule for surgery. And I was like, look, I don't have insurance. And they're like, all right, well, best of luck. And then, I was out on a bum knee, and there was nothing I could do. And then I got so desperate, I just started Googling pro bono ACL surgery. I was like, maybe there's something here. And I found a clinical trial for an experimental procedure called the BEAR, the Bridge Enhanced ACL Repair. And for those of you that don't know, like a traditional ACL repair, what they do is they take your torn ACL and they grind down the stumps on both sides of it, and then they take either a piece of like your patellar tendon, which is on the front of your knee, or they'll take a piece of your hamstring, or even use a cadaver. Yep. And it's not always successful. I've seen failures with grafts and things like that, and a lot of people historically re-tear ACLs, and most people say that their knee is never the same after a surgery. What the Bridge Enhanced ACL Repair is what they do is they actually take your torn ACL, they stitch it together, but the problem is there's no blood flow to your ACL. So what they do is they take a purified block of bovine protein and collagen, they stick your torn ACL into it, and then they inject it with your blood to create a blood-rich healing environment, and then your ACL grows back together on its own. And when I heard about this, I did days of research on it. So when I went to the doctors who said, hey, you're a valid candidate for this clinical trial, when I started asking questions, they were like, are you in the medical field? And I was like, no, I've done so much research on this experimental surgery that I want to know everything about it. And this doctor from Virtua in South Jersey, Dr. Sean McMillan, who's a great, great, great surgeon. He specializes in knee surgeries and rotator cuff surgeries, so he redid my ACL. And at this point, my prime is leaving. I'm, 32, 33, something like that. I've now lost almost a full year. But I told myself I'm going to fight again, and I'm going to fight within 1 year of my ACL surgery. Before I was even cleared to train or cleared to fight and compete, I scheduled a fight with CFFC against a very, very dangerous grizzled veteran, a guy named Jeremiah Labiano. He was a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. Had fought in the main event in Bellator multiple times. He was no pushover by any means of the imagination. And I fought him, I believe, 11 months after I had ACL surgery. And we had an insane back and forth fight. And I ended up choking him out very, very late in the fight in the third round. And it was a wild comeback. And I thought, at that point I could go out on top and just be okay with, managing to come back from such a devastating injury. And then I got offered a title shot for another organization called Art of War, where they asked me to fight for the featherweight title. And at this point, I'm 0-2 in title fights as a professional. And I just thought, maybe third time's the charm. So let's go for it. And I thought it was a good matchup. And it was just the training camp. I never took anything so seriously in my life. And I was doing, the fight was very emotionally charged because my opponent was who I thought was a friend. And he started, saying a lot of really offensive things, Can I swear on here?
You can.
Okay. Well, he was calling me all sorts of bad names and things like that. Swearing, calling me, another word for a cat and things like that for, taking my time to accept the fight. And I was very upset. And it turned out after the fight, we were completely cool. He was like, I can't fight my friend. So I have to say things to emotionally charge myself to want to fight you. So he wanted me to engage, and I bit hook, line, and sinker. And so I was like, oh, I'm gonna flatline you and all this other stuff. And when we fought, I was known as the striker. He was known as the grappling specialist. And in the first round, at the end of the first round, in a round I thought I was winning, he floors me with a head kick. And just right over my hands, I get hit, and it's like out of a movie. Like my vision just starts dropping, and I just see him. I'm like, oh no, I'm going down. And he caught me in a choke, and he caught me in about 4 different chokes, and I fought off 4 different chokes for about 54 seconds. It was the longest minute of my life. And I just thought, I was like, not like this. I'm not going out like this. And then I ended up rallying in the second round and winning by submission. And so it was an insane way for me to win.
That's incredible.
For an insane way for me to win my first world title or at this point, my first professional title.
Yep.
So at this point, I'm riding high. I'm on cloud 9. I feel like now it's a matter of time before I get called to the UFC. Nobody answers me. So I said, okay, then I'll defend my title. And I rested on my laurels, and I didn't take my next opponent seriously. He was a 500 fighter, 7 wins, 7 losses, and I wasn't training the way I should have. And then I got sick on fight week on top of that, and we had a competitive fight, and I ended up losing by split decision. So it's like you can tell there's a kind of a theme of my life, which is up and down and up and down. And so I lose this fight, and now at, I guess, 33 or 34 years old, I've now lost my last fight when I had all this momentum, and this now grinds me to a halt because I've now lost to a shoo-in fighter that I was supposed to beat. Sure. And I didn't know what to do. So then, I took some time off again, and then I, was looking for more opportunities to compete. I asked to fight for Cage Fury for their Muay Thai promotion. And so I accepted a fight for that, and then we ran through 4 or 5 different opponents and couldn't get me an opponent, so I didn't get to fight again. And then I got offered a fight in Pittsburgh after that for a different organization and against their hometown kid, because at this point I've lost a fight. They want to use me as a feeder. Sure. Right. And the guy in the promotion, I thought I was very capable of beating him even at this point. So we accepted the fight, and at this point I have spent the majority of my career coaching other people while I'm training. And then finally, right around this time, everybody that I'm coaching starts retiring and starts not contacting me about training people. So I have all this spare time to just focus on myself and maybe a few clients so I can still pay bills and things like that. And then I started making really good friends with one of my jiu-jitsu coaches, this guy, Tyler McBride, and he is a phenomenal grappling coach. And the more I trained with him, the more invested he became in my career and my future. And he just wanted to, he became obsessed with everything I was doing. And then my teammate Billy Markle became obsessed with everything I was doing. And we became this team of guys where we would all train each other and focus on each other, but it was give and take. It wasn't just take. And because of that, we developed this camaraderie and this bond, and we, me, Billy, and Tyler have been coaching each other. Although Tyler doesn't compete, he's been kind of running the show as the coach. And for the first time ever in my career, I now feel like I have a coach who is coaching me, not having to figure out things for myself. And, he's watching tape on my fights and watching tape on my opponents and saying, all right, this is our workout for the day. This is what we're working on. This is what I think will work. So I go into this fight in Pittsburgh, and I'm more prepared than ever. And I'm like, I'm going to crush this guy. And that's exactly what's happening in the fight for 2 minutes. I'm beating the brakes off this guy, and then I accidentally poke him in the eye. And the fight is ruled a no contest. So, again, I finally have momentum. And this was the fight. At this point, my wife is pregnant. And so I feel like I don't have time. It was the last fight I wanted to take before my wife gave birth to my child. So again, I'm doing well. And then everything just grinds to a halt. I don't get a win bonus because it's a no contest, so I lose half my money. I spent the majority of my money just trying to get funds to go to Pittsburgh. So I actually lost money taking this fight. So then fast forward to the end of 2024, I have my child. I'm being a dad. And I don't know how long it'll take me to fight. I'm like, maybe I won't be able to fight for a year because I have to be a good father, because there's one thing that I will not compromise, and I will not let anything get in the way of me being a good parent. You know, my parents did a great job raising me, and they had their differences and things like that, but you always want to do better than your parents. Sure. And I just wanted to learn from their mistakes and take from their positives, and I just wanted to always be there for my child. And then my wife just became this rock of a support system once again. CFFC offered me a fight in March of this year, and I said, I asked my wife, I said, are you okay with me taking this fight? And she said, if you're okay doing it and still finding time for our child, let's do it. And she was my absolute, support system. And I went out there and I trained like there was no tomorrow, because for me, there wasn't. Every fight at this point was, if I lose, I'll retire. If I lose, I'll retire. And in the past few fights, even the fight with Jeremiah Labiano, every time I was in a bad position in a fight, I would start rehearsing a retirement speech in my head. And I had to scream at myself in my head, shut up, focus on the fight. So it's been mental warfare with myself these past few fights. And so I go out there and I fight this guy, and in the first round, he drops me with a punch. Just like all the previous, I keep getting dropped in these damn fights. But something clicked after that. And I don't know if it's the fact that I had a child, but I got up from getting rocked, and there was a look in my eyes. And even the commentator, John Morgan, was like, look at the rage in this guy's eyes. And I went after him like he owed me money for the rest of the fight. And then he ended up kicking me in the face in the third round, and I just ate it and just knocked him out with a punch immediately after. I still don't know how I pulled it off. I didn't even have a bruise on my face. He kicked me square in the face with his shin. And I knocked him out, and I won fight of the night. I won performance of the night. And I called for the title shot against Anthony Delemy. And a week after the fight, the matchmaker said, hey, if you want the fight for the title, it's yours. And I couldn't believe it. I accepted the fight immediately. And then my wife had to go from, all right, we can relax, to, all right, we're right back in a camp. And, and I went even harder for this one. And it culminated in me fighting this, undefeated juggernaut who has terrifying knockout power. I mean, you saw it live. Sure. He was throwing to take my head off, and I had nightmares about this guy removing me from consciousness with one punch. And my coaches put together such a good game plan, and I followed it so diligently. And the fight went exactly as I thought it would. I thought I would have to weather the storm in the first round. He kind of stumbled me in the first round with some serious punches, and then I managed to just force him in a position where my veteran savvy would take over and where he didn't feel comfortable. And it turned out to be a lot of the grappling on the cage that he wasn't prepared for, and I made it an ugly, nasty, dirty fight for 4 rounds. And after the first round, my cardio took over. I was in the best shape of my life physically, but also mentally, and also spiritually, emotionally. I didn't feel like an underdog going into this fight. I think 4 people thought I would win this fight. Me and my 3 coaches, and that's it. Maybe my wife and one other, you know what I mean? So for the most part. So for me to win this fight at an age where most fighters are calling it quits, most fighters are declining, and for me to go upset a young, undefeated, hot prospect and to win and become a world champion at 35 it's been such a feeling that it's so hard to describe, because this is something that I've always wanted to do. And growing up, I saw these guys win this title. Guys like Jared Gordon and Scott Heckman and all these other big names that, Jared Gordon is in the UFC. Bill Algeo made it to the UFC. Pat Sabatini is a hot prospect, killing it in the UFC. And they all held this belt. And I would always see them be like, no, I could never beat those guys. I could never be a champion with those guys. And it just something in the last 4 months recently, I really, truly believed I'm going to win this title. I can win this title. I did everything I was supposed to do. I wrote it down. But more importantly, I put in the work to where the things that I did and the things that I said were fueled by the actions that I had put in. Because, I know a lot of people that saw Conor McGregor say, oh, I worded this into reality and I manifested this with my words. And it's like, I agree with that. But you also have to have confidence in your manifestations by action. And my action and my discipline and my hard work allowed me to fully buy into my belief system of that I am going to be May 24th, I am going to be the CFFC featherweight champion of the world. I wrote it down. I saw it. I looked at it every day. Every time I had a negative thought in my head, it was and new featherweight champion of the world. And I went through my head and thought about what I was going to say in a post-fight interview, which is why I sounded so good on the mic. Yeah. And it was just rehearsing these positive things. But the main thing was that I did the work to feel confident in saying these things. I wasn't lying to myself when I said, I'm going to be the world champion. There was zero doubt in my heart.
Well, you did come in great shape, because I noticed that DeLemme was a little bit winded. You could see him. He was a little gassed. He was breathing heavy out of his mouth. Mm-hmm. And you were not winded at all.
No.
You came in great shape.
I mean, there were moments in the fight where I got tired. But I have a minute between each round. And if you give me those 60 seconds, I train with 30-second breaks. So I train with half the break time. So if you give me double that, I can recover through any sort of 5-minute hell you can put in front of me. And I mean, like, there were moments in that fight, I think at the end of the first round, you saw both of us stop moving for like 5 seconds. We were both like, whew, because we kept a torrid pace for the entire 20 minutes. And I mean, props to Anthony DeLemme. He slowed down, but he never stopped. And he never stopped trying to take my head off.
He was swinging.
Yeah, until the very last minute of that fight, he was trying to remove me from consciousness the entire time. Yeah, so, I mean, and you saw it, like, despite being tired, he was really putting his all into that. He did not want to lose that title by any means of the imagination. And I was prepared for that mentally. I was prepared for the guy that was undefeated saying, there's no way you're taking my O in front of my friends and my family and all my supporters and things like that. And I was mentally prepared for somebody to not break, but I was ready to break him. He was just as tough as I thought he was. And, you know, he was undefeated for a reason. So to overcome that and to win this at 35, I feel like James J. Braddock. I feel like the Bulldog of Burgundy. I feel like the second resurgence of Cinderella Man. And it's just, it's been an incredible journey for me. And I just, like, the more I think about it, I used to be so bitter about the low points in my career. And the low points are what give the high points meaning and feeling. And I would, looking back on it in retrospect, I wouldn't change any part of my career for anything, because the ups and the downs, I mean, an undefeated fighter is incredible, but are they relatable? You know what I mean? Are they somebody you can look up to? Are they somebody that you can be like, wow, I really resonate with that? You know, I had people contacting me after this fight being like, hey man, you know, your journey is so inspiring and you've fired me up and I really want to go after this now in life. And because of your journey, you've inspired me to do that. And
so on the journey, what's next now? Now that you have the belt, where are you going now? Are you going to defend the title? Are you waiting for the call from the UFC? What do you...
I definitely don't want to rest on my laurels, because, I mean, while I think that I deserve a shot at the UFC, I think based on the performance, I think they would have preferred to have seen a decisive stoppage or a finish. Granted, I did what I had to do against somebody who hit as hard as Anthony DeLemme. There was, you know, it would have been a low IQ move to stand and bang with him for the entertainment value and for the potential to risk a finish getting knocked out. Because, I mean, if you could see there was a significant, I have no shame in saying it, there was a significant power discrepancy in that fight. The guy threw hands like they felt like missiles hitting me. Mm-hmm. So I think that in order for me to get a call to the UFC, I need a decisive signature finish in CFFC. So I look forward to defending my title,
right,
and hopefully sooner than later, because I feel like one of the key advantages I had going into this fight was I had momentum. I had fought in September, I had fought in March, and then I fought in May. Anthony DeLemme had fought in October and then took a break to, I believe, go to police academy. Being a police officer in New York is a very strenuous job, and learning police academy, I believe going to police academy is like a 9-to-5 job for a long period of time from what I've been told. So a lot of it is just timing and momentum, and I have so much momentum going right now, I don't want to slow down. I would prefer to fight within the next 3 to 4 months tops.
Great.
So
talk about some of your other passions. Now, you grew up, you didn't come from the proverbial hard area.
From the gutter.
Yeah, from the gutter. And you have a passion for cooking, you have a passion for nature, you're a father, you're married. Talk a little bit about your life outside the UFC, what your other passions are.
Yeah, so I mean, outside of the UFC, one of the ways that I snagged my wife was my cooking ability. So I didn't cook very well at first. I could just cook a steak and it would be raw in the middle. I'd be like, that's good enough for me. But when you start dating someone to impress them, you want to try new things and to be like, they'll be like, wow, you really, know your way around the kitchen sort of thing. And I got really good at cooking by just trying new things to try to impress my girlfriend, now wife. So because of that, I've kind of become the head chef of the house, and it's something that I really take pride in. I really enjoy it. I have a green egg grill at home. I've definitely become like a heavy grilling guy. I'll grill when there's snow out. I don't care. It's just a passion for me, and I have a lot of fun doing it. And, growing up, my passions had nothing to do with fighting. My passions were, my parents wanted me to be a music prodigy. I played the cello for a couple of years. I played piano for a little bit, drums, and then I actually played clarinet for 6 years and was getting serious to the point where I was considering, starting to do like music auditions and things like that. But then once I found wrestling, that completely shut that down, took it over, and just the athletic endeavors definitely took hold. But aside from, cooking and spending time with my child, I definitely have come to appreciate like nature and outdoors and things like that, especially as I've gotten older, because it's, you used to have fun just zoning out and playing video games in the house and things like that. But then you kind of realize something's missing. And you hear it today. It's like a lot of people are dealing with anxiety and stress and all these, medical issues. And a lot of times it's like, have you tried going outside for a walk? Have you tried putting your bare feet in some grass and see how that makes you feel? I think that's a wonderful antidepressant. And I think more people should prescribe going outside for themselves, because, I just think we as humans really need that connection to nature and earth and things like that. And, there's definitely some science behind things like grounding. And, a lot of elite businessmen I know use these fundamental things like grounding to give them an edge in the business industry. But I also just think it's just good for your overall mental health and well-being. And then aside from that, I have 3 cats at home. I'm a big cat guy.
All right.
So, yeah. And I love every part of it, because I feel like it balances out. Like everyone thinks, oh, you're this macho cage fighter. I'm like, yeah, but look at my cats. They're adorable. So I feel like I have a very good balance of, I take myself very seriously until I don't. So it's nice to kind of break the stereotype of, the meathead tattooed MMA fighter. I don't have a single tattoo on me, and you see these guys, they all look like they were bouncers. And, never done anything like that in my life. So I just have a passion for combat sports.
Well, a couple things that are incredible. First of all, getting into the districts, finishing 3rd, and qualifying for the regions when you only wrestled for 3 years. I was a wrestling coach for 15 years.
Oh, okay.
And wrestled in high school, so that's unreal. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
That turns into a love of the martial arts and mixed martial arts and becoming a world champion. That's awesome. But what do you like to cook? What's your specialty? Is there any type of dish other than grilling, or is it just grilling up meats?
I definitely have become a connoisseur of steak, for sure.
What's your favorite cut then?
Oh, it's top sirloin cap on.
Okay.
So like picanha, like Brazilian style. I've been doing that for a while, and that's become one of my things. But I've also recently, I just did a cow share for the first time with one of my coaches. We bought half a cow. So I brought home about 100 pounds of beef. So I've been just trying all sorts of new stuff with like, top sirloin, or not top sirloin, like big roasts and things like that, making all sorts of tacos and stuff. So it's the more that I experiment with new things, the more my repertoire expands. So it's just been a lot of fun trying new things. And then, definitely have a flair for some of the Asian dishes that I like, things like honey soy garlic chicken, or garlic chicken with eggplant, the Szechuan pepper. A lot of these, Asian style flavors are always a fun thing for me as well.
Well, what is your nationality? I know you're the Korean Dragon, but are you 100% Korean?
Oh, so I'm Korean Thunder, but Korean
Thunder.
Korean Dragon sounds good though. I am half Korean. My mom is full Korean, and then my dad is Irish and Italian.
Okay.
So I'm half Korean, quarter Irish, quarter Italian. And then my wife I think she's almost fully Italian, or excuse me, she's fully Irish Catholic, and then a little bit of English. I think 3/4 Irish Catholic and a quarter English. So my son is actually a quarter Korean, half Irish, and then he's part English, part Italian. So it's pretty cool. It's a bit of a melting pot, and it's very cool.
That is cool. Your wife's also a Muay Thai fighter.
Yeah.
And she had 10 fights?
Yep. Yeah.
That must be nice to have at home, because she could understand what you're going through and help push you.
So when we first started dating, I was training her. I just, she worked out, and she had never fought before. I remember I was getting ready for a fight, and I'm trying to focus on a fight on fight week, and she's just really just being kind of, I was like, what is wrong with you? Like, what's going on? I didn't say that because she'd kill me. But I was like, what's going on? Why are you so short and stuff? And she gets upset and she goes, I'm sorry, but fight week is really hard for me. And I was like, oh, are you kidding me? Like, I'm the one fighting here. Like, what's going on? So then we actually broke up for a few months, and then that was the catalyst of her to be like, all right, I want to fight someone, because we broke up. And then when we got back together, it was before she had her first fight. So on her fight week, I just started acting like a jerk for like 30 minutes. And she was like, what's wrong with you? And I was like, I'm sorry, but fight week is really hard for me. And she makes this face. She's like, all right. And I was like, you get it? And she's like, all right, I get it. Right. And then after that, ever since then, we've been super, super supportive of each other during fight camps and things like that. And she's my rock, my support place. And there's no way I would be successful without her now, especially with a child. Like, if she's so selfless in terms of taking care of her child and allowing me to chase my goals and my dreams. And I think that a lot of people say that, if you're going to do this sport to get to the top, it's a very lonely road. And it's like, it is if you don't have the right support system. And for me, my wife is my support system. And so to climb to the top to me has not been lonely, because I've had my wife by my side the entire time.
So with all the ups and downs that you've had in your career, overcoming so much adversity, the losses, the blown ACL, the repair, is there any advice you could give a young person in high school how to overcome any adversity in their life?
I would say it doesn't end there, man. It's like you've heard this, it's very cliche, but it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And you just got to keep going and keep going. And like I said before, if it wasn't for the lows, the highs would feel like nothing. There would be no joy in it. I would rather feel ups and downs than feel nothing at all. So it's when you deal with adversity, you just have to face it head on, but also know that there will be an end to it. And that just when it gets bad, you have to know there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Corey Anderson once said, his wrestling coach would say, it can only last so long. And he would use that in like a wrestling practice, but it also became one of these things in his life. Like, it can only last so long. It can only last so long whenever he would deal with adversity. And then you can use that in a positive light as well to stay hungry, because it's like, hey, I've won the world title and this feeling is amazing, but it can only last so long. Right. So it's like, you can't rest on your laurels. And if you really want to keep winning and keep going, it's like, you got to hit it while it's hot. And the past 6 months of my life, I've hit it harder than ever. I've been more diligent, more obsessed, more disciplined than ever. And I've just been riding that momentum and that feeling and just chasing it and not resting on my laurels like I have done in the past when, I started getting in my own head about how good I was or about where I was headed. And it's just, it's culminated in winning a world title. And it's just been such a ride.
Well, thank you for being here, and congratulations again on being world champion. That's
thank you so much.
Incredible.
Thank you very much for your time.